It's August 8, 1991. Operating room, Barrow Neurological Institute, Phoenix, Arizona. Patient Pam Reynolds Lowry, 35 years old, a singer from Atlanta. Diagnosis: a giant aneurysm at the base of her brain, the kind surgeons whisper about in stairwells. To save her life, they're about to do something that looks a lot like killing her. They cool her body to 50 degrees, drain the blood from her head, stop her heart. Every monitor goes still. Her EEG, the readout of brain activity, flatlines. And that's when she hears music. Hotel California by the Eagles. She doesn't hear it through ears. Those are stuffed with speakers clicking at 100 decibels. She hears it from above her body. She sees the surgical saw, describes it later as an electric toothbrush with a socket wrench case. Perfectly accurate. The official record says her brain was off. So, who was taking notes? This is Theoretical Nonsense. I'm Jake Vance, and today we're talking about the moments when the brain flatlines and consciousness doesn't. Near-death experiences, NDEs, have been mocked, mythologized, filmed, televised, and mostly ignored by science. But over the last 25 years, something awkward has happened. Data. 17% of cardiac arrest survivors report vivid, structured experiences while clinically dead. 92% of those with verifiable details get them right, and the experiences don't fade with time, they intensify. So today isn't about angels or tunnels. It's about a scientific problem hiding in plain sight. How can consciousness exist when the brain doesn't? I'm not here to prove an afterlife. I'm here to look at evidence that refuses to stay buried. Sam Parnia, British intensivist, professional heretic. He wired up cardiac arrest patients with continuous EEGs and cerebral oxygen sensors across 25 hospitals. He wanted to see what the brain did while dying. Answer: a lot more than nothing. During CPR, with average brain oxygen at 43%, some patients showed normal wave patterns, even gamma activity, the signature of focused consciousness, for up to an hour. 39% reported memories or perceptions during that time. Parnia calls them recalled experiences of death. Doctors call them paradoxes. 2024, University of Michigan, 4 patients, all dying, all on life support. 2 show explosive bursts of gamma waves exactly as their hearts stop. The activity centers in the temporoparietal-occipital junction, the part of the brain that maps where I am in space and what others feel. It's empathy territory. It's also where out-of-body sensations live. Dr. George Mashour, leading the study, summed it up neatly. How vivid experience can emerge from a dysfunctional brain during the process of dying is a neuroscientific paradox. Translation: we have no idea. This is where anecdotes get uncomfortable, because some are better documented than most clinical trials. Pam Reynolds, you already met, eyes taped shut, ears blocked, EEG flat, yet she describes surgical details with absurd precision. Maria Hsu, Seattle, 1977, a cardiac arrest patient claims she floated outside the hospital and spotted a tennis shoe on a third-floor ledge. A social worker checks. It's there. Blue, worn at the toe, lace tucked under the heel. The dentures case, Netherlands, 1979. Unconscious man later tells a nurse exactly where his dentures were stashed mid-resuscitation, in a sliding drawer under bottles on the crash cart. All correct. Al Sullivan, 1988. Reports seeing his surgeon flapping his arms like a bird mid-operation. Turns out the doctor had a habit of tucking his sterile hands under his armpits while pacing. No one else outside the OR knew that. When Jan Holden reviewed every verifiable NDE case from 1975 to 2005, 92% of the details were completely accurate, not lucky guess accurate. Impossible to see accurate. Vicky Naratuk was born blind. Totally. Never saw light, color, faces, nothing. Car crash, 1973, clinical death. When she came back, she described the emergency room from above. The layout, the equipment, the jewelry the nurses were wearing. All accurate, all verified. She'd never seen any of it before, because she'd never seen anything, ever. Hallucinations don't teach blind people what seeing means. Hallucinations are usually terrible eyewitnesses. These ones would hold up in court. So now the medical record shows something simple and inconvenient. Brains can be clinically silent. People can still be conscious. And sometimes they notice what's happening around them better than the doctors do. If this were just one story, fine, coincidence. But the pattern repeats across continents, cultures, and even children too young to spell the word death. You'd think near-death experiences would look wildly different from one culture to another. Different gods, different mythologies, different languages for whatever waits on the other side. And yet, the pattern repeats. In India, researchers interviewed 45 people who'd been clinically dead. Not one saw a tunnel. Not one saw a light. What they saw was paperwork. They're hauled before the Hindu god Yamraj, surrounded by messengers and scribes arguing over records, a clerical error. The wrong Vasudev Pandey has been summoned. He's sent back. It's absurdly mundane, but the structure is familiar. Leaving the body, entering a transitional space, meeting powerful beings, returning. In Japan, experiencers describe the same peace, the same brightness, but no being of light. No God, no judgment, just immersion and warmth. A Christian sees the light as Jesus, a Buddhist just calls it light. Anthropologist Gregory Shushan uncovered tribal accounts where the village religion came from an NDE. Someone dies, comes back, says, "Here's what it's like." Entire traditions, including the ghost dance, built around those reports. As Shushan put it, religion didn't invent the near-death experience. The near-death experience invented religion. Early researchers found no NDEs in Muslim populations and declared them rare. Turns out they were asking the wrong questions. A 2010 Iranian study found 63% of Shiite participants had full NDEs, same elements, but with Quranic imagery, 7 gates, burning flames, divine judges, different costumes, same screenplay, movement through darkness, encounter, overwhelming peace, reluctant return. Culture provides the subtitles, not the movie. If consciousness were just a hallucination of oxygen-starved neurons, why would the same hallucination speak Hindi, Japanese, and Navajo but tell the same story in every language? When pediatrician Melvin Morse started studying children's NDEs, he thought he'd find drug effects. What he found was statistical dynamite. 64% of near-death kids, 0% of controls, reported clear, structured experiences. Same hospitals, same drugs, same procedures, completely different reality. Mark Botts was 9 months old when bronchiolitis stopped his heart, over 40 minutes without a pulse, 3 months in a coma with a tracheostomy tube, couldn't speak until he was 3. At 5 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, he told his parents matter of fact, "I was dead. I crawled through a tunnel to the light." Then he described something impossible. He saw his grandmother finding his mother, at least 100 yards away, through hospital corridors, while his body was in another room being resuscitated. Everything checked out. Hallway, distance, his mother's exact position. His mother put it simply, "How can you not believe when he can tell you where you stood, when it's impossible to see you?" 9 months old, no language, no religion, no framework to invent this, yet the same structure adults report. Katie, age 9, face down in a pool for 19 minutes, fixed pupils, coma 3 days. When she wakes, she tells her doctor, "A lady named Elizabeth took me through a tunnel. I saw Jesus, my grandpa, and 2 boys waiting to be born." Then she describes her family at home. Mom cooking chicken and rice, brother with a G.I. Joe, sister combing Barbie's hair. All confirmed. All while Katie's brain was offline. Chris E., age 8, car crash, submerged 45 minutes. He described traveling through a huge noodle with rainbows. Later corrects himself. It must have been a tunnel. Noodles don't have rainbows. A child's vocabulary struggling with metaphysics. Kids don't read moody books. They don't expect light or judgment or heaven. They just report what happened. And the results are devastating to skeptical theories. No cultural conditioning, no language to fabricate. Yet the same pattern. Apparently, oxygen deprivation also teaches theology to infants. Many child experiencers spend decades trying to fit back in. They grow up feeling alien. Some stop talking for years. Others spend adulthood in quiet grief for a place they can't describe. The experience doesn't fade, it waits. For adults, death changes your life. For children, it starts before they've had one. 2 decades after a near-death experience, the changes don't wear off. They get stronger. That's not me saying it. That's Bruce Greyson's 2022 longitudinal study. Elimination of death fear approaches 100%. Spirituality, empathy, and altruism off the charts. Material ambition drops like a stock market crash. There's a price for that kind of enlightenment. A 2012 study looked at couples where one spouse had an NDE, 65% divorced. That's triple the national average. Because when one partner comes back and decides money is meaningless, the mortgage says otherwise. Greyson also found massive increases in ESP-type experiences, from 24% to 55%. Dream recall almost doubles. Some start painting, composing music, or healing without training. Brain imaging even shows new neural pathways when they meditate on the experience. If it's a hallucination, it's one hell of a persistent one, and apparently teaches piano. Many report years of depression or isolation. I don't think society has a framework for people who don't fear death. Just try bringing that up at a staff meeting. "Hey, how was your weekend?" "Transcendent. I merged with the cosmos and lost my sense of self." "Okay, I don't know what to do with that, so Q3 numbers? One-third of child experiencers turn to alcohol or drugs later in life, not because the experience was traumatic, but because ordinary reality feels like a downgrade. 64% seek professional help to process what happened. 78% say support helps, but only when they can find someone who doesn't pathologize them. Many report enhanced psychic abilities that become overwhelming. Excessive clairsentience makes crowded places unbearable. Too wide open psychically with intrusive information I can't filter or control. One experiencer described it. The gift becomes a burden, the transformation, a form of exile. These aren't fleeting psychological coping mechanisms. They're stable, quantifiable transformations. They don't fit the curve of trauma recovery, they invert it. The further from death, the stronger the effect. Greyson put it this way: a brief experience during severe brain dysfunction produced permanent psychological changes more profound than decades of therapy. You can argue about what happened, but you can't argue with a life that won't go back to normal. Skeptics have a point. Not every mystery is a miracle. But after half a century of studies, the explanations sound more strained than the stories. Science hates loose ends. So when people started describing verifiable events during brain flatlines, the skeptics did what skeptics do best. They built better stories. Oxygen deprivation, check. REM sleep intrusion, check. DMT fireworks from the pineal gland, naturally. Let's take them one by one. If low oxygen caused near-death experiences, then every cardiac arrest patient would see the light. They don't. Greyson ran the numbers. Oxygen levels don't correlate with the experience at all. High, low, normal. The tunnel shows up when it feels like it. University of Kentucky neurologist Kevin Nelson says the dying brain mixes dream states into waking life. It's tidy, elegant, and completely fails to explain verified perceptions of tennis shoes on window ledges. Dreams are metaphorical. These people are citing model numbers on defibrillators. Pharmacologists calculated what it would take for the pineal gland to flood the brain with enough DMT to mimic these experiences. Answer: about 1,000-fold increase over anything biologically possible. Even if it happened, hallucinations don't predict the color of the nurse's sneakers. Evolutionary psychologists suggest playing dead, a last-ditch defense mechanism, explains it. But pretending to be dead doesn't involve empathy for the surgeon or insight into universal love. Unless possums are having mystical awakenings we haven't heard about. Materialism hasn't failed. It's just running out of synonyms for hallucination. So if the usual chemistry doesn't work, maybe the chemistry isn't the problem. Pim van Lommel's book, Consciousness Beyond Life, suggests the brain doesn't create mind. It tunes it. Like a radio pulling music from a field already humming. Destroy the radio and the signal's still there. He even calls DNA a cosmic phone number connecting us to that field. During cardiac arrest, the line goes quiet, not cut. Federico Fagin, inventor of the microprocessor, now a heretic physicist, says consciousness is the quantum information field outside spacetime. Your body is a drone, your soul the pilot. Death? That's when the drone hits the dirt and the pilot goes home. He had his own spontaneous experience at Lake Tahoe. White light, unconditional love, observer, and observed collapsing into one. He came back convinced that consciousness is fundamental and matter the side effect. Bernardo Kastrup, former CERN engineer turned philosopher, takes it further. Reality itself is mind. One consciousness, mind at large, splits into individual perspectives the way a mirror shards. The brain isn't a generator. It's how consciousness looks from the outside. When the shard cracks, we remember the mirror. Roger Penrose, Nobel laureate, mathematical romantic, and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff argue that consciousness arises from quantum collapses inside neuron microtubules. Each collapse a moment of proto-awareness, orchestrated into the flow we call mind. It's not computational, it's not algorithmic. It's physics itself waking up. Fagin says we're quantum fields. Kastrup says we're fragments of universal mind. Penrose says we're non-computable moments of quantum gravity. Different languages, same rebellion. They all agree on one thing: the brain is not the boss. Donald Hoffman, a cognitive scientist with a taste for heresy, ran the math on perception. Evolution, he found, doesn't reward truth. It rewards survival. We didn't evolve to see reality. We evolved to see what keeps us fed and uneaten. So everything we experience, space, time, objects, is a user interface. A VR headset tuned for survival, not truth. Take the headset off, and the real world probably looks nothing like this one. He spent 40 years building the math to describe that hidden layer. He calls it trace logic, a kind of algebra for consciousness. In it, the universe isn't made of particles. It's made of conscious agents exchanging experiences. Space-time itself emerges from their interactions. Space-time physics, he says, is just a way of coordinating the experiences of observers. So maybe near-death experiences aren't glimpses of heaven. Maybe they're what it looks like when the headset flickers and we see the network underneath. Recently, Hoffman's mathematics forced him somewhere unexpected. In trace logic, every observer requires a measurable space, the set of all possible experiences they could have, but if you're modeling multiple observers, you can't give each their own separate space. They need to share one, an infinite measurable space, timeless, the same for all observers, all experiences, yours, mine, everyone who ever lived, emerging from this one deeper structure. Hoffman calls it the source. There is this source, it's timeless. It's there for every different observer. And in some sense, all the experiences are popping out of this deep structure. It's the source talking to the source through different headsets. When the math sounds mystical, maybe the mystics were onto something. The hard problem of consciousness and why experience feels like anything just got an upgrade. Because if awareness can outlive the organ we think produces it, maybe we've been dissecting the wrong thing. Materialism says the brain makes mind. Idealism says the brain represents mind. Either way, NDEs throw a wrench in both. If neurons cause consciousness, how do they keep doing it when they've stopped firing? If consciousness causes neurons, why does anesthesia work at all? Maybe, as Sam Parnia puts it, the dying brain disinhibits a fuller consciousness normally filtered out for practical functioning. A polite way of saying, we're dumber when we're alive. Producer model, brain as factory, filter model, brain as valve, smash a factory, production stops, smash a valve, the flow increases. NDEs look suspiciously like the second one. If consciousness doesn't die, what does death even mean? And if consciousness does die, how do we explain the people who didn't notice? Charlotte Marshall's Belgian study is tracking cardiac arrests with full EEG, oxygen, and hidden image tests. The NIH is funding Parnia's work on paradoxical lucidity and dementia. People with shredded brains suddenly becoming coherent before death. Gamma surges keep showing up where silence should be. The taboo topic of consciousness during death is quietly turning into mainstream neuroscience. 50 years after Life, the field that once laughed at NDEs now publishes them in Resuscitation and The Lancet. We've gone from Sunday school anecdote to replicable anomaly. We don't know what consciousness is, but we now know when the brain stops, it's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a better question. Maybe death is less a wall and more a dimmer switch. Maybe the tunnel isn't a highway to heaven, but a reboot sequence. Pam Reynolds heard Hotel California while her heart was stopped. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Maybe that's not irony, maybe it's physics. If consciousness continues when the body doesn't, then we're not meat computers, we're operators. And the hardware was never the point. So when the signal fades, maybe it isn't ending, maybe it's handing off to a frequency we don't yet have the receiver for. Come back soon. Next time, we'll try to tune that signal on purpose, from Cold War remote viewing experiments to out-of-body labs, and the ancient methods people used to leave the body without dying first. I'm Jake Vance, and this is Theoretical Nonsense. Thanks for listening, thanks for being curious.